Brothers, welcome to another edition of Golden Insights. I'm James Bullard, and I'm here with Brother George Felton. Been with Kappa for how many years now?
Well, since 1947. I was made in 1947. And you count the years yourself. I was 19 years old when I was made at Virginia State University.
Virginia State.
Right.
Okay. So why Kappa Alpha Psi then?
Well, it was traditional for guys who came from Washington, D.C. to join Kappa. And I was told I had to join Kappa because I came from D.C. I joined it and I liked it. John Chisel was the pole mark during that particular period. He is now deceased. He was an MD. Charlie Price was a football player. He was a scroll at the time. We won't get into that.
Okay.
So I subsequently made him later on.
Yeah, we've always had another interview with Charlie Price,
Right.
one of the founding members of the Alexandria-Fairfax chapter.
Along with me. Well,
you.
charter member. You're not permitted to say founders, because the founders are the 9 men. We were charter members.
Charter members.
Right.
Okay. So we're going to talk a minute about you being a charter member of the Alexandria-Fairfax chapter and some of your insights on that. But after you left Virginia State, what industry did you work in after that?
Well, when I left Virginia State in 1950, I was drafted in the Army.
Okay.
And I stayed in the Army for 2 years and 1 day. Very unhappy about the extra day because I was drafted for 2 years. I declined admission to OCS because I felt that I would be sent to infantry, and we were in field artillery
Okay.
in 495. That was I was at the post-Truman years,
Okay.
and during the Korean War.
Okay.
And after I got out of there, I was discharged in 1952. I went to grad school for a while at Kappa University, and then subsequently married my wife, who had been a student at Virginia State University, Jean Wheeler. And so in 1954, they opened up Luther Jackson High School. And I went there with a black high school and the only high school prior to that particular time that did not have a high school for black students in Fairfax County. And in 1954, so you can see what was that. They were really trying to circumvent the Brown versus the Board of Education. We knew the whole game. So I stayed there as a teacher until 1965.
And what did you teach?
I taught history and government. I taught phys ed, but Charlie Price came and I switched over to history and government so we would have a position for him, because I was coaching by myself. And Charlie came and took over the football team, and I coached basketball, helped him. He helped me in basketball, I helped him in football.
Okay.
And in 1965, I was transferred to Woodson High School. I knew I was going there because all my ball players got into Woodson High School by hanky-panky, to be honest with you. So I went there. I went back into phys ed at Woodson High School. And in 1971, I was an administrative aide at Woodson High School. In 1952, they made me, I was transferred to George Marshall High School as a sub-school principal. And Charlie and I were only 2 African-American sub-school assistant principals in Fairfax County. And in 1976, there were no black high school principals there. And the superintendent asked me if I would interview for the position of principal at James Madison High School. There were 5 of us. I really wanted to be an athletic director, but they kept pushing me, so I made principal at James Madison High School, the only black person in Northern Virginia to be a high school principal.
Wow.
In 1976. And as a result, I stayed there for 3.5 years. Then my area superintendent, they opened up South Lakes High School. She asked me if I would like to go to South Lake. I said, yeah. And I realized she meant at the middle of the school year. She transferred me in the middle of the school year, and the town of Vienna was very unhappy about it. In fact, my PTA president, who was a big wheel in Congress, said if the lady's forcing you to go, she will have trouble with me. And as a result, the town of Vienna, the mayor and the town council declared February 25th, 1980, George Felton Day in the town of Vienna.
Wow.
I think I was the only principal to be honored like that. So I subsequently transferred to South Lake High School in the middle of the school year. one day, that was on a Monday, he said, "George, do you want to go to South Lakes?" And I assumed she meant in September, which is the usual procedure. She said no. So she sent me there in the middle of school year. And meanwhile, I had received an honor from the NAACP in 1976. I couldn't attend, so my wife attended in my place. And I had a wonderful time at South Lakes. Grand Hill was the student there, but I had left. I met the mother and father, but I had left. So I retired in 1984. When I retired in 1984, George Mason University asked me to work there as a supervisor of student teachers, which I did with them for a while. Also worked on the review board, which was a board created for merit pay for teachers. I left there and I went to George Washington University and worked with them for 2 years, approximately 2 years. And then James Madison University asked me to supervise student teachers in the Fairfax area from I think about 1993 or 94 up until I decided I was getting too old for the job. Okay. And meanwhile, they also sent me a letter making me a part-time instructor in the school, graduate school of education at James Madison University. And I did that. And then after that, I retired. I'm now 79 years old, and I'll be 80 years old in May 8th. But I had a wonderful career. I was also on the Fairfax County Symphony Board of Directors for 9 years. I was Vice President of Education. And this was it. And I received the Pyramid Award one year. I was the only black to have received the Pyramid Award from Fairfax Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
I left there, and then of course I worked in different areas, and subsequently received a lot of awards, which we won't go into, but I had a very wonderful career in education, and until I retired. And I still keep my hand at once in a while. And when my wife passed away in 2003, I sold my house in 2004 and then moved into Gainesville, Virginia in a condo, and I still work for James Madison University.
So you had over 40 years in the education field at almost all levels.
Yeah, all levels. High school, teacher, administrator, college level. I worked with James Madison University from 1994 until about 2000, I think I left in 2007, and I stopped in 2007.
Okay, so that's over 50 years of
education. It was a wonderful career. I met a lot of wonderful people, and Charlie Price and myself and the gentleman from the band director, the three of us were also awarded the Trailblazer Award by NAACP later on.
Outstanding. That's certainly outstanding credentials. We talked just a few minutes earlier about the fact that you're a charter member of this chapter, Alexandria-Fairfax chapter. Would you share a couple of insights about that?
Well, for a while, in that information I sent them, I was inactive for a while. Then I went with the DC chapter and Dr. Herman Tyrants, who was a big factor in my Kappa career and also a big factor in my education career, because he guided me through the process of writing my paper to get my master's degree. And of course, he had passed away. And Dr. Thomas Carter, also, who left Virginia State University and worked for the government, he was also one of my mentors. I give these two guys a lot of credit for my accomplishment, because Herman Torrance was a very wonderful guy. He worked for Howard University. Let me also put in a plug for a program that I'm now on the board. It's called AHEAD. AHEAD is a program that goes into
So, Brother Felton, you were telling us about your experiences as a charter member, excuse me, of Alexandria-Fairfax chapter. Now, you were telling us about some of the people that have been instrumental in your Kappa career, and then how did that lead to you being part of the establishment of the Alexandria-Fairfax chapter in 1976?
Well, what happened when I was with the DC chapter, and then subsequently changed over to the one in the Silver Spring chapter. Then I heard word that we were going to have a chapter here, which would have been much closer to home for me. And Roosevelt Phillips, who was instrumental, and he was the guy who got it all started. I don't think he's never received enough credit for what he did in starting this chapter. He was very instrumental in it. So we started with the members, that, as you said before, and we went from place to place. And then the chapter began to grow. And it's enormous now, according to the original number that we had. What I like about this chapter is that we have a lot, I mean, I'm not just saying there are a lot of very talented people in this chapter.
We do, but if I could ask you, what was it like in the early days, back in 76, 77?
Well,
what was it like back then?
It was give and go, and we had certain goals. I started I wanted to have the scholarship committee. I started scholarship committee. I'm on it now, only a member, but I chaired it for a good little while. And we had good poll marks, as I said in my speech that I gave a long time ago. Roosevelt, Charlie Price, the late Ed Seacrest, Georgia, what's his name? It was from Oklahoma. So we had some good poll marks there. And that's when I discovered that I had an office under Willie Thomas as the assistant keeper of record. I did not know this. I did pride myself on never holding an office in Kappa, and I wanted to keep that streak going. And when Willie didn't make it one day, then Ed asked me to take the notes. And for what? He said, "You assistant keeper of records." I said, "You're kidding me." So I took the notes at that particular time. But now with your new technology and your better ways of doing things, that was very archaic during that period. I took it back to school and ran off with the mimeograph machine. You don't do that anymore. And that's interesting because during that period of transition into the age of technology and cycle, whatever you want to call it, our superintendent of school, Dr. Deck, called all of us principals techno-peasants.
Techno-peasants.
He said, "Well, you guys don't know a thing about technology, about computers," which we didn't. Because, they brought in computers, had the tape type of computers in. And he said, "You guys are techno-peasants." Well, we said, "Well, so be it." But I gradually learned, my son knows more about it than I do.
Well, regardless of them calling you a techno-peasant and not knowing enough about technology, there's a lot you know about the field of education. There's a lot you know about Kappa Alpha Psi. What we'd like to ask you, Brother Felton, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the brothers about Kappa, about you, about industry? What other words would you like to share?
Well, I guess my biggest concern today is where our black males are going. A tremendous amount of concern about that. We're not going anywhere. If we look at the ratio, I talked to one of my former students at the black high school, Milton Grimes, who's one of the top litigators in L.A., next to Johnny Cochran. And he said, in L.A., they are building a lot of wonderful buildings for our kids between the ages of 18 and 24, and they're all jails. So that tells you something. We are still not capturing those young men into a society, and that bothers me.
You've taken us down quite a journey of your 50-plus years in education, working in the community at all levels. You shared with us many great insights and stories. And you shared with us also that you certainly are a man of achievement, which is Kappa. This is what Kappa Alpha Psi is all about. And so for that, and just for being our brother, thanks again for being on Golden Insights.
Thank you for talking to me. As I said before, turn on Google,
Okay.
and George Felton, VT, and you'll see an interview from me in
George
1987,
Felton,
George VT.
VT.
And
Okay,
it's
brother,
22 pages
that's a
long.
challenge to you, those of you. Go to the internet and check him out once again. Thank you.